had been built yet, and so all the cars were stored and thrown in the back as relics. So here now you have the World War II starting, and they're picking up Carlos, they're picking up Art, they're picking up Jojo, and everybody from these farmlands and these back road countries and states over here in the United States. And kids 18 years old never drove before. So for the first time in their lives, they're truck drivers, Jeep drivers, driving military vehicles, getting a license. So when they got out of the military, they came back home.
Wow. Yeah,
and when they came back home, the war was over, the effort was over, and they came home. But in the military, during the war effort, on the way to victory, if your Jeep got shot up and you needed to move your unit, you took parts off of the other cars and other Jeeps that were laying around.
Right.
And we started fabricating, started fabricating and engineering and making their vehicles work and switching windows and doors and hoods and tires and stripping them down and making them work just so that we can keep the war effort on the road to victory.
Yeah.
So when that happens, these guys come home, and now all of a sudden guys that left boys came back men with skills on fabricating and learning how to drive vehicles that they never had before. Okay, so now they come home. Now they come home and it says, hey, Carlos, yeah, Artie, hey, who's 42? Is that a 32 Ford back there? Yeah, let's fix it. Who belongs to? Who's is it? Well, it belongs to, it belongs to Albert. Well, let's put it together. So your skills from the military and your talent and your abilities allowed you to be able to fabricate and put custom cars together because you were used to doing that in the military.
Wow.
But at home, at the same time, Ruby the Riveter was, the hyenas and the women were back home supporting their men and their families and their husbands and their fathers, and they were supporting them by building planes and working also.
Right.
So all of a sudden you got family coming together, working on a ramfla and putting a car together, and it's all custom. Low riding started in Southern California, and the story tends to believe that it was here in LA, East LA.
Wow.
But you had the Valley, and you had other, San Fernando Valley, smaller, Van Nuys, and other outskirt suburbs back then.
Right.
But LA was the hub. Whittier Boulevard is the hub. 1970s comes in, and 60s and the 70s comes in, and that's where all the low riding became popular.
Wow.
That's how it became popular during that era. But it started here in post-Vietnam, post-World War II.
Wow. Good lecture.
So that's kind of how
I just learned something today.
That's kind of how it started, and that's how it kind of kicked off.
Yeah.
And right. Dukes, you know the story with Dukes, right?
No.
Okay, so Oscar Relas, he's here, and Eddie started the first official social car club in the history of California and the history of lowriding.
He's here still?
Yeah.
Alive?
He's here right now.
I gotta go meet him. Yeah, I gotta go meet him.
I'll introduce you to him right now. In fact, he's sitting right there. And so they started their car club in the 50s.
Yeah.
Okay. And with that being said, they were the first official car club ever to be a social group and to be out in the public as a social car club.
Wow.
Now, you have to remember in this, after World War II again, nobody had cars because everything was going towards the military effort. Right. When they came after the war and the veterans came home, more veterans come out of the state of California than any state in the country.
Wow.
That's why they have a special VA benefits program called CalVet. If you're a veteran from California, you get more benefits than everybody else from outside of California because we had more veterans come out of California and go to the military than anybody else. And that was pretty much all raza. There's no other people group that is more highly decorated than the Mexicanos and the raza Latinos in the history of militaries. And we have been in every war, including Gettysburg. We have been in every war and supported every war and been decorated in every war. And in fact, Mexico was sending immigrants and they were sending raza over to fight in the war with Washington. Cuba paid for the military weapons for Washington to fight against the Redcoats. Cuba did. Had it not been for Cuba, Washington would have not had the armory and the weaponry to be able to win that war. Mexico had sent over, I think it was like 20,000 Mexican immigrants over to fight the war.
Wow.
And we have been in every war and decorated more than anybody else, than any people group in the history of the military.
Makes me proud to be from the descendancy of Mexico.
Pero, ¿verdad?
Yeah.
¿Verdad? Pero todo es México.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Pero la raza, we don't know that.
Yeah.
Nobody's teaching that.
Right.
So when I go speak, you know, I have a better prepared message.
Of course.
But,
You got a great message now.
I prepare this message so that to reinstill history, to teach the history that's not being taught, and to reinstill the pride in the people of the corn.
Oh, yeah.
And so people don't know this.
Right.
So now all of a sudden here we are, and you have these new cars being built, all right? But they were back to the car clubs. After World War II, people were walking. There weren't a lot of cars. But because of the war effort and the veterans coming home, that's when the GI Bill was created, and that's when people started moving out of downtown and in the inner cities and started moving out here to the outskirts and into the suburbs. And then when they built the new freeways and the new highway project in the 50s, and Roosevelt then says, hey, let's put this bill together where we can turn around and build the roads and highways. And General Eisenhower said, we could have not won the war in Africa against Japan had it not been for the Mexicans. And there were two Mexican groups. There were two Mexican squads, and one for Eisenhower and one for General MacArthur. And they said, had it not been for those two guys, those two military groups, we would have lost the war.
Wow.
There's no other highly decorated, more valiant fighters, warriors than the Mexicans. That's documented in the history and the annals of the history of the United States Department of Defense.
Wow.
And so
I hope that shit goes viral.
And right. So we won the war, right? Came home, and then all of a sudden, people are walking, but there were walking clubs before there were car clubs. Mike, they're walking clubs. Hey, what were some of the name of the walking clubs in the 60s?
Walking clubs in the 60s? In the 60s?
Yeah.
I can tell you 70s.
Okay, and there it is.
Young Classics, Royal Souls, Young Classics, Royal Souls,
Talking about the 70s?
Yeah, what's some of the
Ariels?
no, Walking
walking
Clubs.
clubs?
Royal Souls.
So
Before the car clubs.
Yeah. So the point is there were walking clubs, and because we were from this barrio, and we didn't have cars, all the 4 or 5 of us would walk everywhere we'd go.
Everybody from
And they
jackets.
had, they would go. They called them sock hops back then.
Wow.
The high schools would have a dance, and then they would go to a burger shop, and then they would go over there and eat. And everybody would walk over there or drive over there.
Right.
And that's how the history of the cars coming through the drive-throughs and coming over there and celebrating the drive-throughs, and the girls coming up in skates. And you ever see them come up in skates, and then they put your tray of food in the window.
Wow.
And that was called the sock
Oh, yeah,
hop.
yeah,
That
yeah.
was the sock hop era, the birth of cruising.
Wow.
Okay, but those guys over there, we'll go introduce you to them right now.
Yeah.
Started the first lowriding car club in the history of the world. And so from them, and they're still alive, we call them the legends of lowriding. So the legends would be the Dukes, Old Memories, Orpheus, Imperial, Click, Majestic, and so there's quite a few of them. I don't know, I can't name them all. And we call them the legends of lowriding, and those legends are still alive. Some of those guys are still alive, and we can go meet them right now if you get it.
Yeah.